Welcome to my IIT Foundation class in Maths for 6th class students. First chapter numbers. In that today we will deal with the multiplication of integers. The product of two positive integers is a positive integer. That is number first point. The product of two positive integers is another positive integer. For example, plus 2 into plus 3. 2 into 3 is equal to 2 into 3 is equal to 6. So, two positive integers is a positive integer. The product of two negative integers is a positive integer. Two negative integers, minus 2 into minus 4 is equal to 2. Minus into minus plus. Therefore, the product of two negative integers is a positive integer. The product of one negative integer and another positive integer. One negative integer and one positive integer is a negative integer. Minus into plus or plus into minus is minus 2, 3, 6. So one positive, the product of one positive and one negative integer is a negative integer. The product of three negative integers. The product of three negative integers is again a negative integer. Odd number of negative numbers. The product of odd number of negative integers is a negative integer. 2 to 4, 4 4s 16, minus 16. The product of any number of positive integers is a positive integer. So this is all about the product of integers, positive integers and negative integers. If we take an even number of negative integers, the product is a positive integer. If we take the odd number of negative integers, the product will be a negative integer. And the product of 0 and an integer is equal to 0. Whether it is a negative integer or positive integer, the product of 0 and an integer is 0. Next, division of integers. So for example, take this product of 2 and 8. 2 and 8 are the two positive integers. The product or multiplication of these two positive integers is 16. Therefore, 16 is divided by 8 is equal to 2, or 16 when divided by 2 is 8. Therefore, division is an inverse application of multiplication. So, division is an inverse application of multiplication. So, when two integers are multiplied, the product of two integers is another integer. And when an integer is divided by another integer, when a positive integer is divided by another positive integer, the quotient or the resultant is a positive number. It may not be always an integer. Here it is an integer, but it may not be always an integer. For example, 15 when divided by 4 is not an integer. It is not an integer, 15 by 4. Just it is 15 by 4 or 4 3 is 12 and 3.75, or it can be 3 by 4. So it is not an integer, it is a number. So when a positive integer is divided by another positive integer, the result is a positive number. And when a positive number is divided by a negative integer, or a positive integer is divided by a negative integer, the result is a negative number. The result is a negative number. This also may not be integer in all cases. For example, 16 divided by 2 is equal to 8 with a negative number. This is an integer. But whereas 13 divided by minus 2 is equal to minus 13 by 2 is equal to minus 6.5. This is not an integer. So when one integer is divided by another integer, the resultant may not be always an integer. So sometimes it may be an integer and sometimes it may not be an integer. Therefore, one integer, a positive integer is divided by another positive integer, the resultant is a positive number. When a positive integer is divided by negative integer, the resultant is a negative number. Or a negative number is divided by a positive integer, the resultant is a negative number. When a negative integer is divided by another negative integer, the resultant is a positive number. When the numerator and denominator or both the numbers are negative, the resultant is a positive. This is about the division. If 0 is divided by an integer, 0 by it is equal to 0. Or an integer is divided by 0 is not defined. This is not division of 0. Division of 0 is not defined. If 0 is divided by any positive or negative integer, the resultant is a 0. But an integer divided by 0 is not defined. Division by 0 is not defined. When an integer is divided by another integer, the resultant is not definitely be an integer. Therefore, the division is not closure. The division is not closure. That is, one integer is divided by another integer, the resultant may be an integer or may not be an integer. Therefore, division is not closure. And also, A divided by B is not equal to B divided by A. Therefore, division of integers is not commutative. So, division of integers is not closure and not commutative also. But whereas in the case of multiplication, when two integers are multiplied, the product is another integer. When two integers are multiplied, the product is another integer. Therefore, multiplication of integers is closure. This is also an integer. Therefore, multiplication is closure. And the multiplication 2 into minus 2 is equal to minus 2 into 2. Or A into B is equal to B into A. Therefore, the multiplication is commutative. Whatever may be the order, the product of the integers is same. Therefore, multiplication is commutative as well as a closure. But whereas the division of integers is not closure and also not commutative. When an integer is multiplied by 1, an integer is multiplied by 1, the value does not change. The same integer will come. When any integer is divided by 1, the same value will come. But when an integer is multiplied by a negative number, the integer becomes negative, minus a. And an integer is divided by a negative number, then it is minus 1. Therefore, if an integer is multiplied by 1, the same integer will be the resultant. When an integer is multiplied by minus 1, negative integer, same integer will be the resultant with the negative number. Similarly, in the case of division, A divided by minus 1 is equal to minus A. $748 divided by 44. 4,748 divided by 44. Both are divisible by 4 because here the last two digits 48 is divisible by 4. Therefore, we will divide both the numbers by 4. 4 11s 44, 4 1s 4, 4 1s 4, 3 remains, 3 4, 4 8s 32, 2 remains, 4 7s 28. Next, 1187 divided by 11. It is not divisible by 11. Therefore, it is 1187 by 11. That's all. The next one is, it is not a integer. Not an integer. Next one, 3564 divided by 22. As this is an even number in the units place, it is divisible by 2. And this is also divisible by 2. Therefore, 2 11s 22, 2 1s 2, 2 7s 14, 2 8s 16, 2 2s 4. Next, it is divisible by 11 because the alternate numbers sum 7 plus 2 9, 8 plus 1 9. Sum